Hi, and welcome to LibraryCon and the Comics Plus booth chat. Today, we're talking to Gina Gagliano with Avery Hill, and we're going to learn a little bit about her background, about Avery Hill itself, and talk about some of their titles that they're excited about and that you should be excited about sharing with your students and patrons. So, Gina, let's start with welcome and tell us a little bit about your history with comics, and then let's get into Avery Hill.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is great to get to talk to these librarians. Always a fun part of the job of comics. So I work at Avery Hill for the past 2 decades. Before that, I worked in Big Five Publishing, both at First Second and at Random House. And we had this global pandemic, the world changed a lot, and I decided to start working with smaller presses instead of these giant publishers who were making awesome graphic novels. And decided to go with working with publishers where they have small staffs and really just like the most heart behind all of their books and the most excitement for them. And Avery Hill is one of them. And Avery Hill is just an amazing UK based graphic novel publisher. We are 12 years old this year, and Avery Hill is really dedicated to breaking out new authors, giving new authors the chance to make their first graphic novel and then be supported the rest of their career by Avery Hill, and also supporting UK authors because, of course, being based in the UK, Avery Hill is all about growing the UK comic scene. So kind of figuring that out with both doing a little bit of experimenting with the form, but also making really strong stories and characters with amazing artwork. So the Avery Hill graphic novels are all just like wonderful, very unique author driven pieces. Each one is very much created out of the personal voice and interest of the authors who are making it.
Do you cover a range of genres, or are there specific genres you guys specialize in?
Yeah, so Avery Hill's focus is adult graphic novels. And, um, I think that's really interesting because that is the space in the comics market that I see right now that needs to have some change. Meaning that there's just so many adults right now who did not are old enough that they missed getting on board with comics with Dogman, like basically 99% of children are doing today, and are still like, comics, graphic novels, is this a thing? Will I find a book for me? And that is totally understandable, but there needs to be still some education and conversion for those folks to be like, comics aren't just superheroes. Comics aren't just these things that you see kids reading. If you are a person who likes poetry or science fiction or contemporary or women's fiction or any of these different genres, romance, fantasy, there's graphic novels for you. So Avery Hill really publishes across that breadth of adult graphic novel publishing, and that's our focus.
Cool. All right. So it's interesting. The for LibraryCon, one of the things we're hosting is a session on comics and manga programming, and basically every webinar, library-facing webinar we do, there are still questions about, oh, how do you deal with questions about our comics real reading? Mostly from teachers and parents asking that question of librarians. Why are you trying to push comics? What have you seen in throughout your career and in your time with Avery Hill? You mentioned some of the changes needed at the adult level. What are some of the interesting changes you've seen on the adult market for comics?
Yeah, well, let's see. Well, when I started in working in comics 20 years ago, it was a whole different landscape. The place where you could reliably go to get comics was the comic store, and the American Library Association Graphic Novels and Comics Roundtable had just started the YALSA Great Graphic Novels for Teens reading list. And that was kind of the many librarians and teachers and bookstores had been supporting graphic novels for years, but that was kind of the first kind of chink in the dam of comics in kind of mainstream library and bookselling culture. And so since that point, it is entirely common for both bookstores and libraries to have comic sections, to have multiple ages of different comic sections. So it's really been a whole sea change since then. And clearly that change, the fact that there are these graphic novels all over the place in places where people go to get books, causes teachers and librarians to deal with more parents, adults, kids, folks coming in and being like, oh, I didn't do this as a kid. Like, why is it in the classroom? Why is it in the library? Tell me more, give me more information. And it's so great that teachers and librarians are on the front lines dealing with those questions and persuading all of those adult humans that not only are there great graphic novels for their kids, but there's amazing graphic novels like the ones that Avery Hill publishes that they can read and enjoy no matter what their reading taste is.
Right. Cool. So Avery Hill being based in the UK, I think there's two notable differences. Europe in general has a different history with comics, particularly for adult readers, than the US. Similar to Japan, like comics were not kind of relegated to only for kids and only superheroes. And there's also a very different library publishing relationship in the UK. So talk a little bit about from the work itself. What are some of the cultural differences readers tend to notice in European comics versus Western American typical comics?
Yeah, so I would say that there's a lot when you say European comics, I feel like people in their minds are like, oh, BD, the French bande dessinée comics, which are like really big and they're all hardcover and they're not that they're all short, but they're pretty condensed. They tend to be like series and segments.
Mhm.
Um, that is not really what we do at Avery Hill. Avery Hill, as a 12-year-old publisher, is more following the successful model of graphic novel publishing in the U.S. and mirroring, standalone bookshelf size graphic novels that tell sometimes series because who doesn't like series, but a lot of complete stories in and of themselves. Um, so I mean, the UK's history with comics with us is kind of more echoed in, just thinking about a reader first approach to stories rather than a market approach, just because the UK and the libraries in the UK have a really different relationship with books, and there's not a public library system in the same way. So, I'm the U.S. person for Avery Hill, and libraries are so important for us and for graphic novels in the U.S. and in the U.S. in general. That every time I talk to the team over in the UK, and I'm like libraries, and they're like, libraries will do that? How does that work? And so. Yeah, they're I think as producing comics, like less thinking about um that there's less thought about like what exactly will work in the library, and just this is part of our ethos as a publisher, just more thinking about like what's the story the author wants to tell, and then we find the market for it because we are supporting that author.
Cool. So you mentioned the difference in books. We're a digital platform, but I've seen some of Avery Hill's books, and they really are well produced volumes, with some heft. So let's talk about some of the titles. We'll talk about a mix of, some backlist stuff, some upcoming titles you're excited about. You have an author on one of the LibraryCon panels. I'm blanking.
Yes,
Is it
it's
Kit?
Kit Anderson, and I brought the Booklist Guide to Graphic Novels in Libraries and Safer Places is on the cover of it this
Oh,
year.
nice.
So that's amazing. So this is Kit's debut collection, and well, not this. This is the Booklist Graphic Novels in Libraries, but the book that is featured on the cover is Kit's debut collection, and she's amazing. She tells all these stories that have to do with memory and place and magic and directionality and all of this stuff. My favorite one is the one that's set in a world where everyone is slowly being infected by a contagious disease that turns them into plants. And the main character has just realized that they're infected and is trying to figure out going about their daily life versus just giving up and becoming waiting until the full plant effect happens, possibly several months or years from now.
Huh.
And it's really fascinating. So she's going to be on this program. Her new book comes out next spring and is called Second Shift. And that's going to be her debut graphic novel. So that's a full-length science fiction work. And it's all about the main character, Birdie, who has kind of a very dull job living on a sort of like asteroid planet where she just like collects and farms asteroids via the interface of the space station that she lives in almost by herself. And she does this for a while and then kind of starts to realize that there's stuff that the space station, her only companion, is hiding from her, and she has to figure out, like, is this a real job? Is this all real stuff that's happening? What's going
Huh.
on? So
Cool idea.
it's awesome. Lots
All
of
right.
the same themes about memory and place and kind of dealing with the everyday and then the extraordinary. That's in Safer Places too.
Cool. All right. What else? What other ones do we have?
Yeah, so a book I'm super excited about is this graphic novel, Adrift on a Painted Sea by Tim Bird, which just came out. And as to your comment about Avery Hill books being very nice, I'll say this one has French flaps, which is nice, and it has printed end papers. As you have the C here that is mentioned in the title. So this is a unique book. It's a memoir, and it's inspired by Tim's relationship with his mother, who passed away at the height of the COVID pandemic.
Hmm.
And he is obviously an artist. He is a cartoonist who's making this book, and he's made several other amazing nonfiction works for us. And his mother, throughout his life, made amateur artwork. So she was always painting and drawing and sketching, doing oil paints, doing watercolors, doing pencil drawings, doing drawing in colored pencils. So of course that really inspired him and his desire to be an artist. And he was always kind of like, "Mom, you have to show these pieces that you're doing to all the people around." And like, don't you want people to see this work? And she never did.
Hmm.
She kind of like made all this art, but really focused on the family life. And so Tim is writing this memoir about his relationship with his mother that pulls in the artwork that she does throughout
Oh,
the
wow.
book.
That's cool.
So he'll he'll have her here making so here this is his comic pieces, and this in the background is her oil painting that
Oh, wow.
she
Okay.
is making pieces on top of. Or there's one point where they take a journey to the sea, to a seaside town. So you have his text and his comics panels of them going through the town superimposed on his mother's painting
Huh.
of that she did while they were doing that. And so he's kind of reliving this history through the art that his mother made in the time that she was making it, which is included on the book in that kind of way. And then also in kind of like interesting and complex ways, in that, like, here's a painting she did while she was in high school, which is then reproduced by him as a painting that's on the wall that he is experiencing as a kid. So I think it's just this really like special and important work, and it's just like wonderful tribute to his mom that she passed away, and he could be like, look, I remember her, and I remember her while showing the art that I think is just like wonderful and really worthy of more recognition to the world. And so it's called Adrift on a Painted Sea, and then the sea on the cover is his mother's artwork.
It's a cool contrast because his style is very different from hers. So I like
Yes,
that.
yeah, it's like, there are some pieces in here that are more from his mom that are more, line drawing. Like the first one is just this like picture of a rose because she did a lot of flowers and nature artwork. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of oil painting and things like that, which is like, you know, it's like, okay, like, here's the seashells that they're doing in this trip, and then Tim's extremely spare, limited color palette line drawing is next to it, and it's definitely a different art experience.
I like that. Is that one's already out or that's coming?
Yeah, it just came out.
That just came out. Okay.
Yeah. So that one's very cool. I can also talk about this book, Be Muir's Disciples of the Soil. And this is a volume of Bee's Ismire series. It is, I think it's volume 5. So these are fantasy novellas, which are the perfect thing to pick up when you're like, like to read something and I don't want it to take, years to finish. And B writes these fantasy novellas in the world of Ismire, which is this world that is a fantasy world populated by animal characters that's on the verge of industrial revolution. So there's magic and all of this sort of thing, but they are also kind of like figuring out how electricity works and all of that. And along with that, of course, there's social change, right? So you have these fantasy characters who are, kind of in these like wonderful old charming cities and landscapes and all of that, who are also like, okay, so like now we're experiencing the rise of labor unions. How not only do we need to figure out electricity, we need to figure out unionizing and
Huh.
how do we deal with the landscape and the climate changing if we're going to have industrialization. So it's this really smart and charming approach to this, and each book is a standalone story. So they're an adventure or a murder mystery or a mission or something like that. And this latest one, Disciples of the Soil, is all about um, the folks in the town deciding that they should build a railroad. And of course, we have the union activists who have all sorts of thoughts about this. But also, interestingly, the folks who have thoughts about this are the local religious order, who are like, did you know you were putting your railroad across the path where our apocryphal snake deity is
Hmm.
supposed to apocryphally live? And the people are like, we're an industrial nation. Like, what even is this that you're telling us? And then it goes
Huh.
terribly wrong. No one could have predicted this except the local religious order who had like told them very explicitly. Um, so you have and B's art is just amazing. Like, it's lots of great watercolor. I'm like, what is here is the mayor character. Um, he does a lot of great stuff with lettering too. This is
Wow.
the hall where the railroad is going to get announced. Um, the railroad for some reason has chicken feet here instead of wheels. The engineers just decided that was better. They're still working out the kinks and things. You also have the labor unions hitting the local police in the face with a tomato. So like
Okay.
lots of good content on many different fronts with these books.
Is that volume all watercolor? Is the whole series
Yeah.
watercolor?
Yep. The art in the whole series is the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's standalones with recurring characters, or just the setting is recurring and each story is its own.
Yeah, so there are recurring characters. The recurring characters are not necessarily in all of the books, but in most books, some characters do pop up that are from another book.
Okay.
But yeah, the previous one to this is called Methods of Dying, and it's about dyeing cloth and also a murder mystery. And it's basically a university murder mystery where an investigator shows up at a college and is like, okay, I'm here to figure out the suspicious death of this local professor.
That's cool. I like that idea.
Yeah.
So I'm putting that one on my personal list.
It's really great.
And that volume, out or coming?
It's out.
Out. Okay.
Yeah. And I also have L. Pidge's Infinite Wheat Paste, which is the first volume of a series that we published late summer. We also have French flaps on this one, which look awesome, and also have printed ends, one color printed ends.
Nice.
Amazing. So this is a science fiction fantasy graphic novel that kind of reminds me of the like science fiction fantasy hybrids of Vertigo comics, like The Invisibles, which kind of combines the idea of like science fiction fantasy and like incorporating it into the everyday. And it is about the person who's a universal holder of fire, and they pass away. And so now there's a new universal holder of fire. And with that change, just like everything in the universe shifts a little. So it's this like multiple character story about all these different people whose lives are changing because of this and the different adventures that they have. And the art is lovely. It's got really gorgeous colors in it. And it's just 20 somethings working their lives out.
Who's the creators on this, or is this an individual?
This is L. Pidge.
L. Pidge. Okay. Looks thick.
Yeah, it's tiny. And this, if you would like extra extremely librarian friendly content, there's also knitting patterns at the end from one of the characters who is a knitter.
Combine your book club with your knitting club.
Yep. Yeah.
And that is the first volume of a series, an intended series?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Got any more?
Yeah, well, I can just say, hold up a few graphic novels by some of our long-term authors and highlight them. George Wilesall is someone who we publish so many books by, and he's amazing. So this is Curses, which is his latest short horror collection. But he's also the author of 2120, which is a choose your own adventure style horror graphic novel adventure for adults. And he just, he does this amazing like internet art inspired work, and it's so brightly colored and intense. And he was telling me about like, okay, I'm making these stories inspired by my time as a security guard and how like weird and boring and creepy it was. And all of his work is really cool, and we definitely think he's an author that folks should know about.
That was Curses.
Yeah, Curses. And same with Owen Pomeroy, who's a science fiction and contemporary author, whose book The Hard Switch is a book about what would happen if the mineral that powered spaceflight ran out. And it follows a plucky team of heroes who are kind of independent space pilots who are dealing with this in lifetime. 2 people and an octopus, and here's the 2 people and the octopus, who has a carrying case that can come out of the spaceship to travel around together. And Owen is a wonderful UK author. His art is just this like, the colors are great. It feels like really retro and cool. He's also an architect, so all of his landscapes are awesome.
Okay.
So yeah, we think he's great. Um, then this is Nicole Goo's Pet Peeves, which is her debut standalone graphic novel that she's both writing and illustrating. And it is about the situation we've all had where pets kind of steal your life, except in a horror way. And it's black and white and red colors theme. Her art is awesome. It's a story that I do think really speaks to the pets and work stealing your life, like 20 something experience. Many of us have gone through of just like, now I'm exhausted at the end of the day, and do I have time for any other things?
Right.
And then I'll also just highlight Elise Weaver, who's another longtime Avery Hill author. And this is her graphic novel, Big Ugly, which is a story about all the difficulties you have when you let an adult relative move in with you with no end date. And
Uh,
so it's about a woman whose brother's just like, I need some help. And of course she's like, yeah, like, why don't you move in and you can get on your feet while you're living here. And they just have to go through all sorts of strain with their relationship while they're living together, and he's working things out and just figuring out their life and their family. Elise's art is amazing. Her colors are so good, and yeah, it's just she's really a wonderful cartoonist. And then the last person I will highlight from Avery Hill is just Tilly Walden, who is amazing. And this collection, Alone in Space, collects all of her short work, including the standalone novellas that we published right at the beginning of her career. So if you're like, oh, I need 300 to 400 pages of all Tilly Walden's nonfiction, fiction, fantastical adventures that are not the ones that are already 300 to 400 pages long. Like this Alone in Space is a great way to do it. And we've been publishing Tilly back since the very first years of the publisher. So it's great to get to keep doing that.
that's cool. Yeah. So that's a broad range categories. So one thing for adults, like you guys are focused on the adults, do you have titles that are occasionally seen as um, potentially of interest to, say, older teen? Young adult is such a squishy term these days, but like older teens, or are these truly like, how do you guys define adult? Because some publishers have a different definition of that.
Yeah. So when we think about adult, we are not thinking about nudity, violence, swearing, the things that would be like, oh, this content is in this and it would make it have like a rating. We're thinking about, this book is about someone in their 20s having the difficulty of life in their 20s. And of course, that's really accessible to teens, and teens should definitely read that book because they need to prepare for life in their 20s because it's coming up soon. But we think that the audience of that book is an adult, like the audience of the um, Adrift on a Painted Sea, which is about dealing with your mother's life and death. Like, and of course, those are both like experiences you can have as a teen or as a kid, and it might really speak or relate to someone younger than that, but it really is an adult target audience.
Okay.
We do have some books, especially because we do science fiction and fantasy, where it's kind of like these characters are in a medieval setting. And so it may be that they're in a crossover age that's kind of adult or kind of teen, and it reads across really well. But for the vast majority of books, that we're really thinking about adult readers.
Okay. But that's an important kind of context there, because for us on Comics Plus, adult is basically a combination of adult themes and sometimes, more extreme. This is America. Violence has got a higher threshold than, say, sexuality.
Yeah.
But it does
So
sound like you've got titles that potentially could be of interest to the right older teen if they're looking for such stories.
Definitely. And, I mean, our books will have content like, and pet peeves. We have here the dog is literally sucking out her life force with its tentacles. But not really
It's not graphic.
gratuitous. It's
Yeah.
not, nudity or yeah, graphic violence. Like I'm like, I think they should have some like shooting various things with an energy weapon in the hard switch, but that's again not
Yeah.
graphic in the way that you're talking about.
Cool. All right. Yeah, that's particularly, for us on the school side, schools don't have access to adult titles, but it's always good to be aware of what might be appropriate, because if you can't access it through us, you have the physical copies that you can get from Avery Hill. So tell us quickly, where can people learn more about Avery Hill? Website, socials, email contact, or
Yeah, so we do have a website, averyhillpublishing.com, and are on Twitter and Instagram, and you can definitely find us there.
awesome. So thank you. Great to learn more. Great to get to talk to you. You'll find information about Avery Hill here in our booth, so feel free to access that section of the booth. I'm not in it right this second, so I can't do the pointing, but we've got a copy of their catalog. We've got a title list that's got some ISBNs. Anything caught your eye, drop that into your favorite wholesaler's ordering form and get some copies of Avery Hill books into your physical collection, but they're available on Comics Plus. We're happy to have them, and we're happy to you're able to share them with your older readers. So Gina, thanks for joining us, and hope you have a good time at the rest of LibraryCon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right.